Ciao everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Learn Italian with Songs. Today we are going to talk about a song that is being very talked about right now. And as you might have noticed from the title, I'm talking about Piazza San Marco by Annalisa featuring with Marco Mengoni. The literal translation of the title is very simple because Piazza San Marco is one of the landmarks of Venice. You know, when you think about Venice and you often see pictures of a big square with a church, a cathedral, well, that is Piazza San Marco, Saint Mark Square. Now, this track is going to be part of the new album that is going to be released on the 10th of October 2025. Ma io sono fuoco, but I am fire. Piazza San Marco, just like Maschio, is going to be one of the singles belonging to this album, and the whole theme, generally speaking, of the album should be transformation. So, what type of transformation are we going through in Piazza San Marco? Well, practically, for example, we are talking about the first collaboration with Marco Mengoni. In fact, both Annalisa and Marco Mengoni are two of the greatest artists on the Italian singing scene, but they never made a featuring together. This year was a year of featurings for Marco Mengoni. In fact, we also had another featuring we talked about in another video, Sto bene al mare, where Marco Mengoni collaborated with other two singers. Despite being a featuring, this song is quite well balanced. Why? Because this song can be divided in two blocks. The first block expresses more the point of view of Annalisa, our protagonist, the protagonist of our story, while the loyal assistant is going to be interpreted by Marco Mengoni, and we are going to see his point of view in the second block of the song. I have my personal interpretation of this song. I'm going to tell you about during the analysis of the lyrics, but I will try to focus more on the lyrics per se so that you can develop also your own point of view, and I'll try to keep my point of view for the discussion at the end. So, as usual, without further ado, we can go and check the lyrics, shall we? We start from the intro. Well, as I said, we could divide this song into blocks. We have the intro, the verse, the pre-chorus, chorus, and the post-chorus. And this is going to be the point of view of Annalisa, so the protagonist of the story. And then we are going to have, again, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, post-chorus, and the outro, and that is going to be more the point of view of Marco Mengoni. In the intro we have vento da est e freddo veramente. Wind from the east, it is truly cold. Ma dove finisce quello che non finisce? But where does it end? What does not end? Mentre restiamo in coda, while we wait in line, we start with the wind of the east, which in Italian is called Levante, and it matches one of the winds passing through Venice, because as of course hinted by the title and then showed in the video, the story is set in Venice. And in fact, not only for the video and the title, but the story we are being told is in Venice, and in fact we find it also in the lyrics. And then another little note is dove finisce. I translate it as where does it end, which is the literal translation. However, the meaning is more like where does it go? So, when something ends, and we are going pretty much to talk about a relationship, also given what is said later in the song. So, what happens to a relationship when it ends, right? This is a bit the question of the song. Mentre restiamo in coda while we wait in line. Now, what is this line? You decide, basically. It can be the line of when you wait, for example, you have to pay at the cashier when you do grocery and whatnot, and you find yourself in one of those moments where you have nothing to do, so you start scrolling social media or thinking about your own businesses, and maybe you're going you're going to think about your ex because of course, guess what, we are going to talk about problematic relationships once again, just like we like them, but it could also convey the idea of waiting for someone else, right? The whole point is waiting for something with other people. You decide what these mean more specifically. We have the first verse. Chiedere a te non è servito a niente. Asking you was no use. Chi vuol capire capisce. Sì. She or he who wants to understand understands. Yes. Ti ho visto salutare una ragazza bionda. I saw you say hi or goodbye to a blonde girl. Now, are we going to talk about unhealthy relationship not ended properly? Of course we are, because we like it. We like suffering. So, she, like our protagonist, asked the ex, the significant other, what happens to the relationship when it ends, but it didn't happen. And then there is a sort of idiom, not really, but more of a collocation maybe, which is chi vuol capire capisce. And in Italian, I had to translate it, I had to put she or he who wants to understand, because in Italian we have these genderless formulas. For example, chi vuol capire capisce. And then we have ti ho visto salutare, and I translated it as I saw you saying hi or goodbye, because salutare can mean to greet, but also to say goodbye. Here, I think it's more saying goodbye. So basically, she saw him with another woman, and they were saying goodbye to each other, probably after a date or after a I don't know, a shared event, if we don't want to call it a date, a meeting, maybe while they were still together, who knows. But of course, our protagonist doesn't seem very happy about having seen this. And then we have the pre-chorus. Here is always Annalisa. Quante lacrime nell'acqua tonica. So many tears in the tonic water. E sembrava di bere il mare. And it felt like drinking the sea. Ma quanto parli, mollami. But how much do you talk? Let go of me. Che è solo venerdì. That it's only Friday. Amico, cercasi. Friend, wanted. Devi sapere che, you have to know that, and we are going to find out what we need to know in the chorus, but first, a couple of notes concerning the pre-chorus. So, it seems like drinking the sea. Why? Reference probably also to the Venetian lagoon, because let's remember that Venice is located in a lagoon. friendly reminder for our friends who are not that strong in geography. And the water of lagoons is quite famous for being bitter and also salty, probably because it's not the cleanest, but since it's still seawater, it's salty, but this lagoon situation also makes you think about bitter. So we have the saltiness of the tears in the tonic water, which is bitter. Probably also the tonic water is a reference to one of the most famous drinks used to have so many aperitifs, which is the spritz, because I really think that in Veneto, people's blood is at this point 50% spritz. And usually you do it with the Aperol, the tonic water, and you have several variations. Generally, I used to do it with white wine. Might be a reference to that as well. Like many symbols related to Venice. We have our protagonist who is being locked by someone who keeps talking to her, and she wants to go and have fun because it's Friday. And then we have amico cercasi, friend wanted. Now, if you know a bit of Italian, listen to some Italian songs, probably you already found the expression cercasi with 3 A's and then cercasi, wanted. Now, what is this? The phrase cercasi is a graphic device originally used in newspapers ads to gain greater visibility by placing them at the top of the alphabetical arranged list. It is not an acronym, like some people think, but a strategy to occupy the top positions in the list, since ads beginning with A or AA or even better AAA, so 3 A's, were displayed before those with subsequent initials. It's just alphabetical orders. This practice, which originated in the early 20th century, was particularly widespread because the additional A's were counted as whole words and therefore paid for, representing a financial investment to increase visibility. Over time, the phrase has acquired symbolic and cultural value, becoming a familiar reference in the collective imagination to indicate a personal ad. In this whole explanation was more of a cultural note on the side, if you will. What Annalisa is doing here is referencing something that an Italian speaker would recognize easily, making a play on words with amico. Let's remember this, amico, keyword. And then we have the chorus. So what do we have to know? Per piacerti di più ti ho mentito. To please you more, I lie to you. Of course, here literally would be to be liked more by you, I lie to you, but this was smoother. Caramelle mischiate all'arsenico, candy mixed with arsenic, e scaldarsi al fuoco di un accendino rubato, and warming myself, ourselves, by the fire of a stolen lighter. Oddio, che ansia, però. Oh my god, so much anxiety, though. Piazza San Marco era bella da far schifo. Piazza San Marco was, which is St. Mark's Square, was incredibly beautiful. Se penso a tutte le ragazze che hai preso per mano su un molo, when I think of all the girls you held hands on a pier, in the same identical way. Very important. Here we have always the perspective of Annalisa. Per piacerti ti ho mentito, se penso alle ragazze che hai preso per mano. It's Annalisa, like at least the role interpreted by Annalisa, talking to the ex-lover. Is this a good relationship? Of course, no. Otherwise, without bad relationship, how can we make tea? So she says, to make you like me more, I lied to you. With a metaphor, caramelle mischiate all'arsenico, candy mixed with arsenic. Now, apparently, Annalisa really likes arsenic for some reason. Probably she likes the sound of the word, I don't know. Maybe because it rhymes well, I don't know. But could be also a reference of another song where this word, which is very specific, appears. And this song is Mon Amour, the middle song of the trilogy of songs composed by Bellissima, Mon Amour and Sinceramente. Now, why the arsenic? Why this poison? Because some people say, if I remember correctly, it was Agatha Christie, that arsenic is supposed to taste sweet, which would make sense when associated to a candy, because candies usually are sugary. Now, normally people studying chemistry says that it should be tasteless, but there is this thing about the fact that it could be sweet, but it's still a poison. So we have something sweet which poisons you. Beautiful metaphor for this toxic relationship. And then we have the image of warming by the fire of a stolen lighter, which is like, I guess, a very good metaphor for breadcrumbing, which is that phenomenon where your lover gives you the bare minimum to stay attached. Because, of course, first of all, you can't really warm up with a lighter, and it's even stolen. So, of course, the lover probably is not the most healthy, like the healthiest person. And then we have another expression that is very familiar and colloquial, bella da far schifo. Now, for those of you knowing a bit of Italian, you might know that schifo is gross. When we say che schifo is how gross. But we also have this way of saying, which is bello da far schifo. And it follows the same reasoning of bello da paura, so like literally beautiful to be scared, or bello da morire, beautiful to die, so beautiful you could die sort of situation, which describe that something is so much something else that it even generates something which is the opposite. It's a sort of an oxymoron used to underline the point. And then, of course, we are talking about a pier because we are in Venice. And then we have the post-chorus. Ma la notte finisce quando chiamano la polizia, but the night ends when they call the police, e la tua mano è ancora nella mia, and your hand is still in mine. The meaning of this line, it's up to you. I'll tell you later what I think. Clearly, I think we can all agree that this is not the healthiest relationship possible. Now, as promised, now we enter the second part of the song where we start to see the point of view of Marco Mengoni, and you're going to see that also the words are changing. 10 alle 3, però c'è ancora gente. 10 to 3, so like we are 10 minutes to 3 in the morning, but there are still people. Ti passa, ma non finisce qui. It passes to you, but it doesn't end here. Chissà dove sarà quella ragazza bionda. I wonder where that blonde girl is. And then we have the pre-chorus. Quante lacrime nell'acqua tonica. So many tears in the tonic water. Again. Fortuna, ci piace il sale. Luckily, we like the salt. And here it changes if you notice. Ma quanto parli, mollami, but how much do you talk? Let go of me. Che è ancora venerdì. That it's still Friday. E noi, che siamo sempre qui, and we who are always here, devi sapere che, you have to know that, chorus, per piacergli, di più gli hai mentito. To please him more, you lied to him. Caramelle mischiate all'arsenico, candies, it's plural. Candies laced with arsenic, mixed with arsenic, e scaldarsi al fuoco di un accendino rubato, and warming yourself by the flame of a stolen lighter, because in Italian is more impersonal scaldarsi. In English I have to give it a subject. Oddio, che ansia però. Oh my god, so much anxiety though. Piazza San Marco era bella da far schifo. Piazza San Marco was incredibly beautiful. Se pensi a tutte le ragazze che ha preso per mano su un molo, if you think of all the girls he held by the hand on a pier, nello stesso identico modo, in the same identical way. And then we have the post-chorus. Ma la notte finisce e rimaniamo solamente noi. So it's different from the first post-chorus. But the night ends and we are the only ones left. And then we have soli noi, repeated several times. I counted 14, but don't quote me on that, which is as alone. And then we have the outro, closing the song, which is pretty much a repetition of the chorus, but just a piece of it. Oddio, che ansia, però, oh my god, so anxious, though, however, Piazza San Marco era bella da far schifo. St. Mark's Square was incredibly beautiful. Se pensi a tutte le ragazze che ha preso per mano su un molo, if you think of all the girls he held by hand on a pier, nello stesso identico modo, in the same identical way. Ma la notte finisce quando chiamano la polizia, but the night ends when they call the police, e la tua mano è ancora nella mia. And your hand is still in mine. Now, that was the lyrics, but this is how I see it. So, this is the perfect description of when the girl who keeps finding the worst man possible on earth is breaking up once again and goes talking to the gay best friend to cry her eyes out. This is the perfect representation put in a song of this image in my head. So in Italian we have a genderless way to describe, how can I say, potential or ex-partners that are not ideal or the healthiest. And it is like casi umani, human cases. It's an insult, by the way. And then we have a specific term, which in English you might translate as man-child, but in Italian is a little bit more. And it is il malessere. I don't even know how to translate il malessere. So, il malessere is that man that clearly doesn't give a shit about you, just want to fuck, and like it's a fucking collection of red flags walking, okay? This is the description of il malessere. Literally speaking, it would be the... How do I translate il malessere? Let's see. Because literally speaking, it would be the opposite of the wellness. Because wellness is benessere, and il malessere is the opposite of il benessere. Yeah, like the issue is that it's called like it's usually translated as illness or discomfort, and malessere. Malessere is stronger, guys. I can't convey the depths of illness of the malessere, of discomfort of the malessere, okay? But basically, this is the girl who just not even broke up. She got left by the malessere, and she's going to cry to her gay best friend, who is amazingly interpreted by Marco Mengoni. Bless him. So we have the intro, okay, where she's like waiting in line, probably doing groceries, okay, and she's thinking about her ex. She keeps thinking about that fucking walking red flag who was her ex. She tried to talk to him. If he wanted to understand, he would have. He clearly didn't give a shit. And right after breaking up with her, she saw him with a blonde girl. Il malessere. And she keeps crying. She calls Marco Mengoni, and they need to take to get a spritz in Piazza San Marco so she can cry her eyes out in the spritz. And we can know this by the amico, cercasi. But luckily, we are getting blessed by our best friend Marco Mengoni coming with us to drink the spritz, which is going to be salted a little bit more by our tears for the malessere. Perfetto. And she keeps thinking about him, because she said, to please you more, I lied to you. I'm thinking about all the girls you held hands on a pier. And then if we go and check the chorus sung by Marco Mengoni, we have like this girl like talking in her head with the malessere, and then we have Marco Mengoni trying to talk to her because he says, to please him, you lied to him. And if you think about all the girls, like, I can see Marco Mengoni like, Queen, he didn't deserve you. Like, think about all the girls he went around with in Venice, and because like it's the same thing, okay, the chorus sung by Annalisa and the chorus sung by Marco Mengoni, but the feeling in my head, it's a whole telenovelas, the feeling in my head is completely different, because the chorus, according to Annalisa, is like she's thinking about him like, oh my god, he cheated on me, I'm just one of the many, and we did this and we did that, and I lied to you. And then we have Marco Mengoni like, Queen, I mean, you are saying this, he clearly doesn't give a shit about you. Can we please stop crying in the spritz, okay? In fact, like, then we have in the post-chorus of Annalisa, the night ends when they call the police, and your hand is still in mine, while in the post-chorus of Marco Mengoni, he says, the night ends and it's only us left, us alone. So probably she's thinking about the end, like the night ended with the ex, while the point of view of Marco Mengoni is, yeah, but in the end we are left alone because he's not here with you. You know, quite of a problem. And in the part of Annalisa, which is also repeated in the outro, when she says quando chiamano la polizia, it could be random people who saw her and the ex doing shit. And so, like, the fun ends when people call the police, and probably the toxic guy ended up in prison or things like that. And could be also when the girls he is quote unquote dating call the police because they find out that he's not the most legal person on the street, if you know what I mean, okay? This given, the outro can be interpreted in several ways. We have the endings, okay? We have the bad ending where this problem keeps repeating, so she keeps going back to him. So when people call the police and the toxic guy ends up alone once again, he goes back to Annalisa, and that's why the song ends with "and your hand is still in mine" e la tua mano è ancora nella mia. Or, chat, we can have the good ending. The good ending is that, and we see it from the point of view of Marco Mengoni, and I prefer this interpretation because technically this is in the second part, which is the Marco Mengoni point of view, where instead of her going back to the ex, she actually ends up staying with the best friend who came and who she called in the first part of the song, and the end ends when they call the police because they take away the toxic ex, and the hand she is holding is actually the one of the friend. I prefer the good ending where the toxic ex is taken away and she's being with the bestie. Girls, your bestie is better than the malessere. Of course, however, this duality is quite necessary for the meaning of the song because sadly the bad ending is also a possibility. But we are manifesting good ending and I'm taking the good ending home. That said, let me know in the comments what you think about Piazza San Marco by Annalisa featuring Marco Mengoni. I hope you enjoyed. Grazie everyone for watching and arrivederci.